Pakistan Environmental Awards and Conference of Best Environmental Practices to mark the World Environment Day is a brainchild of very well-known climate and environment advocacy expert and geopolitical analyst Mr. Munir Ahmed, the Executive Director DEFCON Pakistan, who was the first ever designated environmental reporter way back August 1991. He has numerous initiatives on his credit, including the Pakistan Mountain Festival launched in 2005 and is the world's largest international mountain day event. Its activities are spread over almost 2 weeks and thousands of people attend it every year while it makes headlines in the national and international media. He architected World Environment Day PTV Telethon for a decade, kicked off mainstreaming of climate change in Pakistan 22nd May 2007, when climate change was not a buzzword. Other initiatives he launched include Pakistan Mountain Youth Forum, Pakistan Mountain Ambassadors, Pakistan Mountains Pride Awards, Pakistan Green Initiatives, National Women at Work Festival. This year, he launched CSR for Women Development Award and today's event. Recipients of several scholarships and awards. Please welcome Mr. Munir Ahmed to brief us about today's event.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, environmental experts, and the university students. I'm really honored to have you all here to kick off a new initiative, Pakistan Environmental Awards and Conference of Best Practices. Basically, the aim of this new initiative is that Pakistan has now a history of environmental mainstreaming for over 3 decades. And we have created many best examples, still remains undermined, and still there is a need to replicate them in other sectors as well, even in the same sectors as well. So, and I thought to break the rhetoric and to bring this kind of best practices to the limelight and encourage them to inspire more such kind of initiatives. And I believe that as Pakistan Mountain Festival has become world's largest international mountain day event, today's beginning will become a milestone for Pakistan. I hope so. And I'm glad that you guys come to witness the historic moment basically. I believe so, that at the moment we will not just be talking about again the same rhetoric things, but we will be discussing in depth the issue of today, land desertification and climate resilience, in a panel. And that would be consist of Pakistan's a few best environmental experts and also the 3 excellencies that have graced the occasion. With this, because you have already waited too long, and I really don't want to prolong my welcome address, but it's humble, it's my pride privilege to welcome you all, and let's begin our show and take it to next step. Thank you very much.
Now watch a message of Executive Director, United Nations Environmental Program.
To restore our lands, to build drought resilience, and to combat desertification. Because land degradation and desertification affect over 3 billion people. Freshwater ecosystem also degraded, making it harder to grow crops and to raise livestock. This disproportionately affects smallholder farmers and, of course, the rural poor. But nature is resilient. By restoring ecosystem, we can slow the triple planetary crisis, the crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature and biodiversity loss, including desertification, and of course, the crisis of pollution and waste. We can help to reverse biodiversity loss by 2030 in line with the global biodiversity framework. And we can get closer to keeping the global temperatures in line with the Paris Agreement by increasing carbon storage, including in the peatlands. And we can reduce poverty and food insecurity in line with the SDGs. Work has begun. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is backing commitments to restore 1 billion hectares of land, an area larger than China. Last year, 6 countries pledged to restore 300,000 kilometers of rivers and 350 million hectares of wetlands. At the 6th United Nations Environment Assembly in February, nations agreed to strengthen sustainable land management. And later this year, the 3 Rio Conventions, the one on climate, the one on biodiversity, and the one on desertification, are each holding a conference of party, or COP, to push further the ambitions of these conventions. Land restorations can be a golden thread that ties together action and ambition across all these 3 important gatherings. So we must make this work count. I thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for hosting World Environment Day 2024. On this important day, I ask everyone to join Generation Restoration. Our land is our future, and we must protect it.
While changing climate is hitting hard the entire world, especially the countries like Pakistan. We faced $30 billion loss in 2022 floods and still struggling for funds to repair the damages. So is the situation across the globe. UNEFCCC 28 conferences of parties have not come up to the expectations yet. World Environment Day is the biggest international day for the environment, led by the United Nations Environment Programme and held annually since 1973. It has grown to be the largest global platform for environmental outreach. It is celebrated by millions of people across the world to create awareness, engage different stakeholders, pledge our commitments, plan for future interventions, and so on.
To moderate this important panel discussion of esteemed panel of guests who are joining us today, which include, of course, the diplomats as well as some experts from their fields. So, before I go on inviting the esteemed panel of guests, I would like to bring in a little bit of from the recent history what we have seen as far as Pakistan's vulnerability to climate change is concerned. Back in summer 2022, we saw the floods of epic proportion hitting various parts of the country, including southern Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh and Balochistan. After that, what we saw was Pakistani authorities urging the international community to help Pakistan out in that difficult time. And it was not only the Pakistani authorities which were urging the international community to help Pakistan out in that difficult time. It was the United Nations Secretary General himself who visited Pakistan and witnessed firsthand the kind of scale and the proportion of the destruction and the damage accrued as a result of those biblical floods that we witnessed back in 2022. After that, the United Nations Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, he appealed to the international community that it is the time that the developed world should come forth and help Pakistan out, because helping Pakistan out is not the matter of charity, rather it is the matter of justice. So there came a concept of climate justice at that particular moment. And rightfully so, Pakistan being one of the least emitter as far as the carbon emissions are concerned globally, happens to be one of the top 10 countries which are vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change. Later on, we saw that the United Nations launched 2 flash appeals, but surprisingly, there were a lot of pledges made by the international community as a result of those flash appeals. But we saw those pledges not being materialized to their fullest. Then Pakistan also spearheaded through its diplomatic efforts some endeavors at the international forum, particularly when we talk about the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund at COP27, and then this particular Loss and Damage Fund was also materialized back in during the COP28 also. As we are heading towards COP29 at the end of this year, let's see how many pledges which have been made by the international community, the donors at that time, that we are going to give this much amount to the developing world, which happens to be the vulnerable to adverse impacts of climate change. Let's see what is fulfilled. Also, we saw that the Pakistani authorities bringing in the 4R framework, the Resilience, Recovery, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction framework Pakistan brought in. The Ministry of Planning also worked hard in that particular direction in formulating that particular document which was presented at the international level. Also, when we talk about the Ministry of Climate Change here in Pakistan, so Pakistani authorities have been trying their level best in order to think about it, do the brainstorming, how Pakistan could be protected against the adverse impacts of climate change. Regarding the theme of this particular World Environment Day, which is land restoration, desertification and drought resilience, with a slogan of our land and our future. We'll be talking about what does this particular theme and the slogan mean, especially in the context of Pakistan. Would it be the best practices when we talk about how to restore land, how to go towards less desertification, and how basically to avoid droughts. To understand all that, and also when I have already mentioned the kind of efforts Pakistan had put in order to make the international community realize and sensitize them about the developing countries' vulnerability to climate change, what is the importance of diplomacy at this particular point in history, we do exactly stand. So to understand all this, I'll invite our esteemed panel of guests on the stage. Firstly, the Belgian ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Charles Denon. Mr. Denon, when we talk about this particular theme, what does that mean to you? And specifically talking about climate change, the environment, overall issues which are related with the environment, how Belgium had been going about it.
First of all, thank you for having invited me to this very important meeting, and also thank you to the public to be present in such a number. When we speak about climate change, very often experts are putting a lot of statistics for it, and it makes the discussion sometimes very abstract. If you are posted in a country like Pakistan, suddenly these answers show you that the consequences of the climate change are extremely visible and also tragic sometimes. That's my first reaction after having been posted for 2 years in this country. Belgium is a small territory of about 30,000 kilometers, located at the center of the European Union, with Netherlands as a neighboring country, good neighbors. But we realize that our countries are very small and that pollution has no border. So, as small countries, persuaded that multilateralism is the answer for global problems, we also prefer to develop a multilateral approach, and in our case, it's mainly the European Union. The European Union is committed to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. This is a very ambitious goal, and this requires mobilization of a lot of resources. The question, of course, is if we will be able to achieve those goals in a constant way, that we will be able to approach those goals gradually. I would say, this is my personal experience as a diplomat, I think that political support in the long term is something required, absolutely required, but climate transition can have very negative social aspects, and that makes it particularly challenging for politicians to keep a constant support till 2050. That's the first
Right. Mr. Brown, when we talk about the differences you've already described in your first state, your experience the last 2 years over here in Pakistan, right? If I'm correct on that. The kind of vulnerability Pakistan has had over the last 2 years, especially when we talk about the floods of 2022, and currently as we speak, Pakistan is in the grip of severe heat waves also. How climate change is impacting Pakistan and how it is impacting the European Union countries? Is there a difference in the pattern how climate change is affecting both these regions?
Climate change affects Pakistan, and I think that the Pakistani are much better placed than I am myself to see how they are affected. What I can say is that I was 3 times on spots of where real natural disasters occur. Twice during the floods, and recently in the Swat Valley. I visited Kalan, we went up to Kalan, and then we saw what a smelting glacier can cause, how many damages suddenly a smelting glacier can cause, and finally cause destructions in a whole valley. So, as a modest citizen, I try to travel throughout your country, and indeed, it is very spectacular. I think, nevertheless, that some measures can be taken by the Pakistani government to mitigate the effects of climate change. And we can elaborate a little bit on that. But mainly it comes to implementation of legal frameworks that already exist, sometimes since decades. How we saw that from Belgium, that was also your question. Well, we try to be solidar and to mobilize funds, first of all to help people. So as far as my country is concerned, we provided tents before the flash appeal of the Pakistani government. So it means that when we observed abnormal rains in August, we immediately understood that this would lead to disasters, and so we mobilized our first aid team in Belgium, and we managed to provide 300 tents before the flash appeal. So it was at the end of August. Of course, it's modest if you look at the magnitude of the catastrophe, but nevertheless, because we reacted first, we were able to help people in the most critical phase. So it was when water was invading everything, and that the people had to leave their house with their clothes on them, and that was their only belongings. Later, we provided a water purification installation, and the rest of the Belgian contributions are mainly to international, multilateral institutions, such as FAO, Red Cross, Red Crescent, etc. We work by crowdfunding, so it means that those institutions, in case of natural disaster, can react immediately without losing time with flash appeals, appeals to donors, etc. The advantage is flexibility. The inconvenience for us is visibility, but solidarity is what matters the most.
Solidarity is what matters the most, and quite commendable efforts as far as your country in helping Pakistan out at that particular critical juncture when it was hit by the floods of epic proportions. Mr. Clark, when we talk about climate change, a phenomenon, as Mr. DeLon has already mentioned, it doesn't take care of the geographical borders. Pollution doesn't take care of the geographical borders. So when we talk about climate change, the kind of adverse impacts that we are seeing or witnessing, and most importantly, the developing world, we've not only seen developing world coming into the grip of the adverse impacts of climate change, we've seen forest fires, floods also in the developed world as well. So climate change, not a threat to only developing world, but to the entire humanity, to this planet Earth, our very home. Your understanding regarding that?
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree. This should be a very happy occasion today. You know, everyone in the room, I assume you care about the environment. I assume you care about climate change, and that's why you're here. At the same time, we all know the Paris Agreement. We agreed to keep global warming below 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees. Already last year, we received a report about Northwestern Europe. We had already reached the 1.5 degrees warming in our region. So it is a bit of a sad story as well. And we are all being impacted, whether we're developing, or whatever phrases you want to use. What we see is that extremes are becoming more extreme. Cold is becoming colder, heat is becoming even more hot, and droughts are becoming worse. You might know that our country is very well known for all the waterworks, the dikes, the protection against water. For centuries, we have been focusing on keeping out the water from our country. However, our climate, our weather patterns are changing. Nowadays, even though this month of May was the wettest month on record in our region, and you might have seen the pictures also of cities in Germany, our other neighbor, where they're dealing with floods. Even though it was the wettest month of May, these days, and during the summer months, we actually face droughts in our country. We've never faced that before. We always had too much water. So now suddenly, we have to completely start rethinking what we do. How is climate change affecting us? We suddenly now have to start thinking about retaining water. It's a very different concept for us. So yes, we are being affected. Pakistan is being affected. And you know all better than I do how you're being affected. Again, droughts are becoming worse, heat patterns are there. The only way to work on this is to join forces. Internationally, also at the federal level, among provinces, and at the local level. And I think the most important thing that we can do is realize that we all can and should take action at our own local levels, but we cannot address it without cooperation, international cooperation, and share our expertise and experience. And that is what the Netherlands is trying to do here in Pakistan. We do not come with large funds, but what we do have is we have a lot of experience and experts. We have our institutions, we have our knowledge, and we'd like to share that and also apply it to the benefit of Pakistan. Because remember, 1953 was the last major flood that the Netherlands saw. Several thousand people perished, and the Pakistan people stood up and supported the Netherlands, and we are only reciprocating when Pakistan helped us, and we are trying to help Pakistan as you have helped us.
So, Claude, very important point made. Now, what are your thoughts when we talk about Pakistan being the least emitter of the carbon emissions globally, yet remains vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change? One of the top 10 countries. What are your thoughts about it? Is it because we have seen United Nations Secretary General coming himself, witnessing firsthand the kind of proportion, the damage that was accrued as a result of those floods back in 2022? the wrongdoing of the developed world, as he meant that it was not the matter of just charity, rather it was the matter of justice. So, what should Pakistan be doing when it hasn't done anything wrong in that particular direction, but yet it is paying a huge price in that regard?